what the Captain America drawing of Tony Stark's building or corporate headquarters actually means to me by James Lynch. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Jamespoeartistry podcast. This week, I want to talk about a scene from a movie, the Avengers movie, Captain America, and also Iron Man. You've heard me make quite a few commentaries on Stan Lee and Iron Man. There was a scene in the movie with Captain America, Steve Rogers, where he had awakened. See, here's some origin backdrop. He was one of the super soldiers from the 1900s World War II era. Okay, he was an American hero. He was also really given the rank of a captain, and it was more for, again, publicity and the way it may have looked, on the other side, the enemy, it would have looked like just propaganda. All the same, the reason why he was given that super soldier serum, they called it, for the strength that, that grew him, was because of a statement that he made that showed how he really feel about the situation. He was once asked, so do you want to go kill the Nazis? And Steve Rogers, before, he was accepted with that, to be the one injected with that super serum or that whole experimental process, he said, I don't want to kill anyone. He said, I hate bullies, wherever they may be at. Okay. Now, what is not shown in the movie as much, because it wasn't really needed in the story, but you can certainly see it from the comic books, that he had a sidekick, a very good friend, very good best friend, named Bucky. And what happened, the way that he was later brought into the movies, is that when he disappeared from a crashed plane, in freezing waters. I don't know whether it was Antarctica or what have you, but it was freezing waters where he went into suspended animation, which is a part of a storyline development in science fiction quite a bit. Cryogenics, space travel, etc. And so this was written in as part of the plot as way back, that could have happened even during the 1930s or 40s. You see what I'm saying? Just as a side note, you see, because it's like we're taking a creative idea, again, of like Stan Lee, and it's still bringing out some types of experiences and facts on what it could have been developed from, or just to say, hey, hypothetically, could this still be the case? Well, one thing that I will tell you, see, even back then, in the early 1900s, 30s, when Adolf Hitler actually came to power, over that side of the world, he did all sorts of experiments, atrocious experiments. I mean, whatever could come to those mad doctors or mad scientists' minds, they did it. They did it. And so anyway, that goes to show you still the view of experimentation and everything back then. Eugenics, you see, being willing to even wipe out a race, in order to maintain or grow a super race, But anyway, that's the type of era this character had grew up in, that Stan Lee had made, and it became a war hero until he himself also fell into suspended animation. You see what I'm saying? And then later woke up, you see, in our present day century. You see, whether it was back in the 70s or 80s of the comic books, or now we got the millenniums or something, still, they do a nice job, because remember, I told you, when it comes to the Marvel Universe, all comic books, timelines and things of that nature, they do not go at the same time frame, space and time that we have in real life. And it certainly has maintained the characters and quality, even though you will see them just shift and they'll create different universes and this and that at times or what have you. But in general, before the 2000s came in, I would say all the way up until really the 80s or 90s, they kind of kept real, um, close to just, this is the century we're in. This is the way the characters are growing, but we're still not going too far off, so the timeline is just going slower. And granted, you see what we have today with all these alternate realities and storylines. Even from the comic books, you can actually have a story arc that covered a whole bunch of comic books, back in the 80s and 90s and things of that nature. And yet, today when they make movies, they still are able to add their own creative twist to even that story arc or what have you. Well, let's get back to Iron Man. Not Iron Man, well, with Captain America, Steve Rogers, when he woke up, and he felt out of place. He had already mentioned to the agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., you see, Nick Fury. And just to give you some background information on that, for many, many years, Nick Fury actually was a white soldier. You see what I'm saying? And yet, by the time we hit the millennial or the 2000s or what have you, as you can see from the movies now, his skin color happens to be black. And I'm just mentioning this because it's neither here or there. I mean, both characters, especially the one in the movies, man, he really did a good job with that character. Samuel Jackson, right? Samuel Jackson. So the whole point is that he had mentioned to Director Fury or what have you, how he just felt like, since everybody that he had really loved or cared for were no longer around. And this was after he had this dossier of, all these people and their backgrounds, who was alive and now deceased. And that's how he came across Tony Stark, that he was the son of Howard Stark. And it just, I guess you could say, helped moved him to go and eat at this little cafe that was outside. They had a nice setup. And this drawing that he was putting together with this building, he was drawing the Stark building. And you will see that, man, after all those many years, boy, he still got it, or somehow just that focus that he really did, possess or have, was having him, some people might call it a sketch, but this was not just a sketch. I mean, the detail that he was putting in that drawing. I talk about a Bob Ross, in the reference of what have you. But see, I admit, the direction wasn't so much on the expertise of his drawing skill, no. But see, I was still bringing this up because there was a waitress that talked to him about how people do come around just to see if they can catch a glance of Iron Man flying into that building, and she was insinuating that, oh, I guess that you're here for the same reasons. And the thing about it is, as you know, he was there for a reason, but it wasn't necessarily for any fanfare at all. You see, as you know from Captain America, what he went through and what his personality was. It was He was there because he was still trying to find his way, if you will, trying to find his interest, where he fits in this new world, this new century. Um, and you can tell that, as I mentioned, it's like it's all in the drawing. It goes to show that if he was there at that spot and he was putting his interest at that time, just even drawing that building, which he didn't even have to, what have you. But see, here's just a side thought. In reflection, he could always think back to the time period that he was in and the technology that they had. He had the state of the art knowledge, etc., etc. Now he's in this new century, and where was the state of the art technology at now? Who has shown the ability to implement it in ways like none other? And I know you may talk about the shield, but bear with me here, because we're talking about still the connection, because the connection of Howard Stark, how he was part of the military complex and things of that nature. But getting right back to that building, that why he was there, what types of things do you think he was actually, rolling around in his mind, in memory, while he was drawing? Do you think all he was doing was just focusing on just drawing? Or do you think as he was writing or stroking each line or what have you, it was bringing up other parts of his own history? The unknowingness, all the same, of the century that he's in now. How even his state-of-the-art technology that he had during his time has now been far surpassed by the technology of this day as well. You see, it's a good thing that super soldier serum still lasted or what have you. You see? And so, it just makes me still think that today, and when I talk about people having their own journey and things of that nature, I mean in the sense that we know everything is still going to be all right, but I tell you what, we were made as individual personalities for a reason. Individual personalities for a reason. And so what that means is, everybody does not have to be the same in every way every single time. When I talk about creativity, things of that nature, it's like, even if two artists actually draw the same painting. I mean, you have some of those same use coloring books or whatever, where you can color by the lines or paint by the lines or what have you. But see, I want to bring that out for a reason, because if you have two artists even doing the same painting, can't you still always notice something that's a little bit different, that's a little bit unique? You see? Well, I'm sharing that with you because it's the same thing with creativity in every aspect, especially people continuing to develop their crafts, their stories, their art, You see, in closing, this is my emphasis. My emphasis is this. I've just seen so much now over the past 10, 15 years or something, and now especially with AI, where people continuing to try to justify not paying somebody a wage for this and that just because they're saying there's nothing new under the sun. And I'm here to tell you today that yes, there's nothing new under the sun being done, but something new under the sun is being created by each unique personality developing their craft or their inventions or what have you. There's something different that comes from you when you are actually still doing the exact same thing somebody else is doing. You see what I'm saying? And many will just celebrate it. You see what I'm saying? But then there's some that, like I told you, if that same person ends up putting up this masterpiece or what have you, and saying, give me this as a wage. And then you have other persons. It's one thing if the person don't like it or don't want to buy it. But I told you, I've seen today people who will like it, but then they just still don't want to buy it. They just still want to be stingy and cheapskates and justify, you see, being able to take it instead of just buying it. So what I'm still emphasizing is trying to tear down that artist or that writer or that musician or that rapper just in order not to pay them a currency or a wage. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. It's still being more than stingy. It's still taking something you have no business taking, and just because you tear it down and try to say it's all the same, it's not worth that nothing. I told you, that person being a unique individual, and you know where I always say in God's image, making whatever that item is, oh, you better believe a price tag, a service can be placed with it. And so today, as we continue to try to develop our different crafts or skills to make a living, I want you all to remember that. I want you to remember you're a unique individual and personality. You were made with an individual personality on purpose by God. It goes to show, yeah, he wants his people to be obedient, but he doesn't want them to be robots either. Okay? So anyway, keep finding your way. Keep appreciating your own gifts as well. Take good care of yourself, perceptive readers.